Yo, what's up, Snaps? Aaron Murray here. Our boy T-Bob is out at a charity golf tournament today. So you got me and my boy Dan Mullen going to be joining us as well, talking some college football today. Let's bring in a little Dan Mullen action in here. And we got Dan. Dan left by accident. Dan will be joining us real quick here in a second. But I got a lot to break down with Dan Mullen, former coach there, Mississippi State and Florida. You're doing somewhat of a little bit of a spring preview, talking about some teams as spring ball's getting going here in the Southeastern Conference. Myself actually be on the spring game for Missouri this weekend, so you can check that out. We'll obviously talk not a lot, but a decent amount about the college football expansion as well. Kind of get his thoughts on 12 or 14. What does he feel about that? Maybe a little bit about Dan's career, and then dive into some of these new contracts, because I want to know if Dan was going to get back to coaching, if he still's got that itch. What is he putting in his contract? Because you're seeing guys getting PJs, flight miles. You're seeing them get memberships to top golf courses and country clubs. What would Dan want when he got it? So I'm just getting a text from him right now. Trying to get him to download the app. All right, we will get Dan back here in a quick second. I will get to a couple questions real quick. Goat Dog says, are you a 12 or 14 guy when it comes to the playoffs? I want to see what it plays out. I think T said it really well yesterday. I think we're all really rushing to go to this new 14-team playoff here in the next a few years when this 3-year period is over with. Let's just see how the 12-team playoff plays out. Like, I'm excited for it. Now, that 4 was great. Obviously, we were blessed with an incredible last go at it this past year, where you had 4 teams capable of winning a national championship and a couple teams on the outside that you could have made a case were good enough to win a national championship as well. And so now you give more teams that chance. So let's just see how 12 plays out, at least for a season, how we like it, how we don't. Last thing I want is for a season to come out this year and there'd be 2 really elite teams and everyone else kind of sucks. And it's just not as exciting. And then we're still talking about, let's add 2 more teams on top of that. So I just like that it's expanded. I'll tell you that. Like, I like the fact that we're no longer 4, we're 12. And now the big question is going to continue to be, if you do continue to expand, you get the 14, what does that do to conference championship weekend? Do you get rid of that? Do you just focus on season right to the playoffs? Let's get going and not kind of have that week in between. Cousin Eddie says Mullen hates Kirby. Possibly. Yeah. I haven't asked them. I know they both have houses there at Lake Oconee. I don't know if they've chopped it up on the golf course or not, but maybe he does not like the extreme to which Kirby recruits. And I know a lot of fans obviously were upset about that. Greg Hendricks, Aaron, is the game on SEC Network on Saturday? Yeah, the game will be on SEC Network on Saturday. I think it's SEC Network Plus, ESPN Plus. So come check us out. 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern. And we got Dan back in the fold right now. There he is. What's up, Coach?
How are we doing today?
Good. You?
I'm doing great. I am doing great right now. So finally back on my feet. Had some knee surgery this off season, kind of moving around first, starting to move around slowly but surely.
Well, what does off season entail for you nowadays?
Boy, very different world, right? Than I used to have right now. That it's kind of weird. At the national championship game this year, after the game, I'm sitting there talking to people at ESPN. I'm like, hey, I'm here if you need me for draft, combine. They're like, we'll see you in August. Some time off. Even though I think I'll be doing some spring games here or there, or that there'll be some different things coming up. But it was I went down, had a meniscus repair done on my knee to get all that fixed up, and so hopefully I get back to normal that way. A lot more family time at home, working on some other projects, just different things you didn't have time. But also the biggest one, I don't think I missed a kid's game right now. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, a little bit of commuting right now. I've just gotten in, my son this year as an 8th grader, gotten into this AAU basketball, which That's a new, different world for us,
Yes.
right there, right? I mean, he's playing for this the Atlanta Celtics team, and but the driving in and seeing some of this AAU basketball, I know the football side of it, I know the 7-on-7 side of it, all of that, but the basketball is a new little deal for me.
At least it's AAU basketball, not baseball, so you're indoors in the ACC and not in the Georgia Heat this summer if he does get to the baseball part of it.
Baseball stuff. I see those. I've talked to those people like, hey, we're at our first game here at 8 a.m. on folding chairs outside. And they're like, well, the championship game's 10:30 tonight. So fortunately, ours has kind of been a little bit more structured all during the day so far, but we'll see as it keeps going on.
So I want to ask you this. I kind of teased it before you jumped on right now. I'm seeing all these coaching contracts. And there's a couple of questions I want to get at this, but the first one first. I saw Steve Sarkisian's. I don't know if you saw the details of it, but some of the extra benefits now that these coaches get. So like, the miles on the PJ, country club membership, cars, clothes. I mean, the whole nine. You get everything. What was kind of besides the money aspect of it, what were some of the kind of cool perks that you got that you liked? And what were some things that maybe you would ask for in today's game if you were coaching or did jump back into it?
But I'd have to really go study. I remember going when I first got hired at Mississippi State, I talked to my wife. I said, hey, we don't even get to see the school. I've never been to Starkville. She's like, I went out there. I covered when she used to work at the Golf Channel. She's like, I covered a U.S. The women's mid-am over at Old Waverly. She's like, just as long as we get a membership to Old Waverly Golf Club over there in Mississippi, she's like, we'll be good. She's like, take the job. It's definitely worth if we get the golf membership to Old Waverly. So that was a big one. Back then you'd get cars. They have the car dealership where you go do and help the car dealership out, and they give you access to cars that, like, at least a car that you get to trade in and out. Was the big one. The plane came along a little bit later in my career, and that's a big one right there. That was one I took a couple years in that all of a sudden you started getting access or hours to the plane.
And this is separate from recruiting, though, right? That's not recruiting hours. This is just personal hours. You can
those are personal. Those are personal beyond recruiting. The recruiting's the recruiting. You need it in the recruiting. Like you're nonstop going around it. I think all the schools, the recruiting aspect, do things differently, right? There's some that have their own jets, some that use like the Wheels Up memberships for everyone on their staff. And my coaches, we had a jet, so I think the one I was fighting for at the end, I said, hey, we might need a Wheels Up membership for our assistant coaches, because we have the plane that I'm using, but we have assistant coaches trying to get around everywhere. They're like, well, we don't know about that, even though I think, there's some of the schools out there that every member on the staff uses the plane to go recruiting every single day. We didn't quite have that benefit drawn in.
Did you have to drop C-Rob off at different places?
Yeah, like that, or they were stuck driving or figuring it all out, trying to get around. But the funny one is you better have a good accountant.
Yeah.
Because all of those were taxable benefits. So, you're sitting there, you get the bill even though it's in your contract, you get the private jet, you're getting a bill at the end of the year for your taxable benefits of using it. Now, trust me, it's not as good. It's a much better deal than when you have to go pay out of your own pocket every single penny for the private jet. You want to do that now, which I quite haven't gotten around to getting that new deal on the private jet. ESPN doesn't have the same deal with the private. I guess for some of their guys they do, but certainly.
Well, Herb Street's. I think Herb Street's like an early investor or president somewhere up in Wheels Up. So I think he obviously has the deal. I think that's how ESPN kind of worked into Wheels Up as well through.
Herb Street. You got to be a Herb Street or a McAfee to get that type of deal.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too. You bring up the taxes. I mean, I remember when I got to NFL, I had this Nike deal. So I had like $30,000 a year that I got Nike gear. So obviously my parents, my brother, girlfriend, everyone's like, oh, Nike gear, let's go get loaded up. I didn't realize the same thing. Like that was like, I had to pay taxes on all that at the end of the year. So I'm like, hey guys, I know I get $30K to spend on Nike, but I'm still having to pay a little bit at the end of the year on taxes.
You had to go call your brother and be like, hey, all those sneakers I sent you, I owe some money on that.
I owe a little bit of money on that actually. So it is one. Last one, the coaches and the contracts. I don't know who your agent was, but the buyout money is just absolutely incredible with some of these deals. How important is that for a coach? Like, is that one of the top things that you're going in hard on, like this buyout number when it's all said and done?
Well, my buyout when I got to go in Florida was really low. It was one of the
Yeah.
lowest in the country. And part of that came from a situation I looked at. I said, if you don't want me to be your coach, I don't want you keeping me around because the buyout's too high. You know, I mean, if this is collapsing and falling apart, I don't think that was fair to do. Now, going back, as my wife yells at me now, like, I mean, I guess she's like, well, we should have gotten a lot more money when you got let go. But you know what? So maybe if I ever went back in, I might look at it a little bit differently. The funny one to me is athletic directors. The athletic directors and the president said, well, the contracts for coaches are too big. The buyouts are way too big. But they're the ones signing off on all of them. You know, I mean, it's not the coaches doing all of this.
No.
And, you know, so I think that's the interesting one. If they want to stop it, they can stop it. Just don't sign the coach to that type of contract. Or don't sign them to that type of guarantee. That's totally the option of the athletic departments, you know, and how they want to run it and how they want to do things. So I think when you look at that aspect of things, that's totally in control of the athletic department up front on how they do things, that they're going to do it. They're going to go and they're going to race and give these coaches the amount of money. I mean, hey, if you're a coach and they're going to say, we're going to give you all this money, you're going to say, hey, that sounds like a good deal. I'll take it. You know,
do you view it like it's just like guaranteed money for an NFL player or an NBA player? Like this is your guaranteed, like you have your salary, but X amount is no matter what guaranteed, depending on, you know, we let you go, we keep you, whatever happens.
I think it's all set in different categories, right? It's your buyout. If they're to fire you, right? If they're to fire you for cause or without cause, right? For cause, they fire you, you get nothing. Without cause, you know, fire you, they just want to fire you and move on. This is what your buyout, and then this is what the structure of your buyout is over a certain number of years, where you continue to get paid. So I think a lot of those things are structured certain ways, you know, and then, you know, that's all for the agents and the lawyers. All of those guys figure that stuff out. But, you know, I mean, that's one of the deals that you're looking at. And I think, you know, sometimes schools look and they see an advantage of keeping somebody on a long-term deal. They don't see an advantage of doing it. That's the personal preference of the school.
God, it's crazy. I mean, just even go back to Sark's new deal. I think the buyout, and it's not like he's going to get fired after this year. I think it's in the 50s, and it kind of works its way down. I think $9 million every year through the length of the contract. It's just being a fired coach in today's world is absolutely incredible. All right, let's get to some football here. Spring football is upon us. A lot of schools have started playing. You talk about spring games. I told the people listening right now, I'm actually on the call for the Missouri game this weekend, which is crazy. We're in the middle of March. I'll be calling a spring game. But I do want to hit a couple of the big time schools with you and just kind of get your thoughts of, you know, what do you think from them? What do you want to see in some of the storylines? And let's start with Alabama, obviously replacing Nick Saban. Kalen DeBoer comes in from Washington. How do you replace someone like Nick Saban? You know, you've worked with some incredible coaches, some of the best coaches of all time. How do you go in and fill those shoes? Or is it even possible?
Well, I think the one thing you have to do is you say you're not there to fill his shoes. You're there to be you. And I think Kalen DeBoer is excellent football coach, very intelligent, been around, you know, and he's won at every level he's coached, you know, and you look everywhere along his career, he's been able to win. So he knows how to win. He has his own credibility. And I think the biggest adjustment is going to you see that Nick Saban's around, still involved in the program. And I think the really smart thing that Kalen DeBoer does is open Nick with open arms and want to look at how Nick did things. Now, he can't go in and say, hey, I'm just going to come in and do everything Nick did. And I think the interesting one for this to work is that mesh of Kalen coming in and saying, hey, this is now my program. I'm going to run it in my light. Hey, Nick, I'd love your input and give different thoughts, but I can't come in and do what you did. I can't run the program the same way. I have to run it how I run it. You know, but everywhere he's been, that's been successful. And I think that mesh of them together is going to determine how fast they are successful within the new program. Because the biggest one's going to come is the first negatives, right? When everybody's winning, everything's good. Nobody's pointing any fingers or talking about things when it is. But, when there's a loss, then it becomes, is this way better? Is that way better? Boy, we didn't have this problem when we were doing it Nick's ways. We won games. So I think the buy-in for all of the players. Now, I will say this. You watch Kalen DeBoer, his offense, how explosive, how exciting it is. On that side of the ball, I don't see a lot of finger pointing going to be going on, right? I mean, they're going to be saying, hey, we're going to put up points. We're going to throw it around. We're going to get playmakers the ball. We're going to be really good. And so I think they're going to look at the new offense and they're going to say, I'm really excited about this new offense that we're running and the new direction and the style is going. I think on the other side of the ball is where the defensive side of the ball, where a lot of the buy-in has to come with it's not Nick Saban's defense anymore. And, no matter who his coordinator was through all the years, that was Nick Saban's defense. I mean, he had the say of what was going on. And it's not his defense anymore. So it'll be interesting to see how that buy-in goes on the defensive side of the ball.
Do you think it's been built strong enough in this new era with NIL, with the transfer portal? Obviously, we saw that I don't think mass exodus is the right word, but there was a decent amount of guys that have left for the draft. I mean, they're going to have 4 or 5 guys drafted in the first round. You had a decent amount of guys hit the transfer portal. Your best player on that defense side of the football is now playing at Ohio State. What is the drop? Is it 2 games, 3 games? Are we talking about like a 9-win football team, or is it still good enough with Kalen to be competitive in year 1?
Well, I think in today's world, you're not going to find a program in the country that is not having guys leave. I think they brought good players in. I think the players there have an expectation to win. I think the stability and the program's built up enough. I think one of the great things that in the new world of college football, you look at Alabama, they were already at the cutting edge, right? They're not trying to go to boosters and saying, hey, the stadium needs an upgrade. Hey, we need facility upgrades. Hey, the program needs this, and this. That was already in place. And so I think when you're getting to the new world of college football, of NIL, of transfer portal, of how you're getting people in place, everything else was already all set within that program. And so I think it has the ability to move forward. And, I think they're going to make a pretty easy transition into that next step of college football.
All right. Last one on Alabama. I got to ask you about Jalen Milroe, a quarterback I'm sure that you would have loved in your system just with his unique talents and obviously ability to run. With a new offense coming in, we saw what that offense looked like at Washington. How do you, as a quarterback guru, as an offensive guru, how do you play that with a guy that finished the year off really strong, that still has a lot of, I would say, area of improvement, especially throwing the football with his offense? Like, how do you handle that situation? Is it completely wide open? Is it, we're going to do everything we can to try to make him a better passer? How do you handle that from your perspective and your expertise?
Well, I think I think every race you're coming in, every race in spring, every job's wide open. Right. And I think you have to, and I think anybody that doesn't want to accept that is not a great competitor. Right. I think Jalen Milroe is going to walk in the spring. He should say, hey, coach, make the quarterback job wide open. I already have a lot of respect on guys on this team. So I'm not going to have to earn respect and leadership. But I want to go compete and make sure I'm still the best guy. I want you to be pushed every single day. And I'm pretty confident I'm going to win. And when I do win the job and you name me the starter, I already have a great respect of the team. And I'll have even more because I encourage competition. Just like I want all the receivers I'm throwing to continue to compete. I want the O-line to continue to compete. I want everybody to compete and be competitive in what they do. I think that the biggest one is going to be more on Kalen DeBoer and that coaching staff. Tweaking around the strengths of your players, right? Listen, if there was a perfect offense, everyone would run the exact same offense. There's not a perfect offense. Great offensive coaches have the ability and the flexibility, to have a system they believe in, but a system that's flexible enough to build around the strengths of your players. And I think Kalen DeBoer has to look and say, hey, we have a guy that is a good passer, but is a dynamic runner and with the ball in his hand. So how do we continue to I'm not going to shy away from developing him as a passer, but how do I make sure as an offensive coach, in the end, I'm going to play to his strengths? Yep. I always thought a spring ball one is fun. I would look at a Jalen Milroe and say, hey, listen, you're going to be I really feel you should be our guy coming out of this. However, I'm not going to let you run in the spring. You're not even allowed to scramble. Yeah. You have got to stand in the pocket and throw the ball. Now you have to break that in training camp, right? You better break it pretty early in training camp, because he's going to sit there and you're going to sit there and scratch your head and say, hey, Jalen, that would have been a 60-yard run if you took off right there. He's like, well, coach, you told me do not leave the pocket. I've had guys that are that way. If you take away their strengths and force them to work on their weaknesses, you're going to see the most improvement. Yep. And at that point, now you have to know when you take the reins off them and let them go be the complete player. And they've really worked on, instead of relying on their strength of athleticism, they've had to work on being a pocket passer.
Well, and we talked about this last year. I remember at LSU in the spring game, and they did something similar with Jaden, in the sense of not necessarily telling him he couldn't run in practice, but everything they scripted was down the field. Like everything was 10 to 25 yards. Like, hey, we need you to get more comfortable throwing the dig routes, throwing the daggers, throwing the comebacks, throwing to the outside. So we're not even going to script anything within 10 yards. Everything is going to be down the field. I don't care if it's first down or third down. You're pushing the ball vertically down the field. And we saw, obviously, him take those progressions and those steps during the season, just his comfort level within the offense. All right, I want to jump to Georgia real quick. We've talked about this a little before, not you and me, but T-Bob and I, of the importance of this year for Kirby and really separating himself from the rest of the country. Like if Georgia wins this year, Kirby really puts himself in a position where he could make a run similar to what Nick Saban did. Maybe not to that extent because of the uniqueness of college football now, but like, man, it's going to be hard not to say that Georgia is far ahead of everyone else if they do win this year.
Yeah, and I think, one of the great things, you look at Georgia, you're around the program more than most people. Yeah. And so you have that inside track, that inside view on it. But I think the thing that Kirby can really look at this year is, there really wasn't a fall off last year. No. I mean, they lost one game. Yeah. They just lost the wrong game. Mm-hmm. And so, they get to go back to having a little bit of a chip on the shoulder. The great thing that I think that Nick Saban, for all the things he was able to do, he was able to continue to have the team play at an extremely high level and not lose their edge through the years. Right? The complacency. You never got the complacency. Now, did he always have the most talented team? Yes. But did they ever become complacent? No. And that is one of the great things. And I think the great thing Kirby gets to look at this year is say, hard to call last year a failure, even though I know it was. You go back to the streak at Florida, right, where 13-1 without a national championship or an SEC championship is a seat. If you don't win that game and you're out of the championship picture, that was considered a failure. Mm-hmm. When you look at Florida in the mid-2000s, when you started looking at Alabama, the national championship was the baseline, right? I mean, if you didn't win that, it wasn't. So, but within the program and the perception and reality that Kirby's dealing with, the reality was, hey, we lost one game, just lost it at the wrong time. The perception's like, okay, we have to rebound this year. Well, he can use that to his advantage, right? I think a very fortunate deal, to get whatever the NIL deal was to keep Carson Beck in place.
Nice new Lambo. Said a nice new Lambo.
Yeah. Yeah, you weren't driving that. Your deal wasn't quite that level. No. Right. But I mean, he's making a heck of a lot more than most NFL quarterbacks. A lot of NFL quarterbacks. Right. So, I mean, he's making more money than a lot of those guys. So they kept that piece in place for him. So there's stability there. Listen, the roster's loaded with talent from top to bottom. The adjustment does not have to be major. It has to be minor. And I get to go back and play the chip on the shoulder. Yeah. So I think there's so many things that are in place for them that are fantastic. And I think the biggest one for them is how to keep the low profile.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been on great teams, right? One of the best teams I was ever on, 2004 at the University of Utah, right? Where I remember one of the kids in the preseason came out with an interview saying, they're like, oh, hey, what's the goal? Is the goal to win, repeat as Mountain West champions? They're like, well, we're going to go undefeated this year. And it's not a question of whether we'll be undefeated. The question is how much we beat everybody by.
Mm.
Okay. I remember Urban and I, the next meeting, it's like, hey, everybody just shut your mouth. Okay. We might know that with inside our walls, but outside, we don't need anybody to know that.
Yeah,
and
we don't need both.
That team was, and it was. I mean, I think our average halftime score that year was 31-7. We won every game by 17 or more points. And it was a team that honestly, truly believed we're going undefeated. No one can beat us. And it's only the score that matters. Mm-hmm. They played with it, but we didn't need anybody outside knowing that. I think there's so much around Georgia this year that they can look and say, hey, we have a championship team. Just everybody shut their mouth, lay low. Mm-hmm. Let's worry about us. Don't worry about what anybody says on the outside. Let's be humble, eat the humble pie, all of that. Just be super quiet, lay back. And you haven't heard a lot from them this offseason. No. So I think the plan is working exactly how Kirby and that staff wanted to.
Before we get to the last team I want to talk about, this kind of goes into it a little bit. You brought up the NIL piece and keeping Carson around because of NIL and how much he's getting paid. And I think it makes a lot of sense. He has a chance to be Carson has a chance to be the number one quarterback taken off the board next year. I know he's a lot of people's, top 2 or top 3. So potentially top 10 pick in the NFL draft. He bought the Lambo or got the Lambo. I don't know how he got it. I don't know if he paid for it, got it for free, discount, lease for a year, whatever it is. So he's making a lot of money. With money comes responsibilities, comes distractions. You were with Tim Tebow, who would have had everything thrown at him if he lived in this era. If there's NIL around when Tim Tebow was playing quarterback at Florida, everyone would have been knocking on his door. How do you think Tim would have handled it? You know him personally, you know him well. How would he have managed this era with his gigantic brand that he had?
I think the craziest one is that's different is his probably would. He's one of the few players in history. All of it would have been legitimate for what NIL was actually designed for. Not just because you're a great player, because his brand was so worldwide while he played, and he was so marketable. I think Tim. I think that I don't know that it would have changed him because I think he would have had people in place that the branding would have taken care of itself. And Tim was always so committed to the platform.
Yep.
And I think his would be, hey, I want people in place that I'm going to have this ridiculous amount of money. It's not just because I'm a really good football player. It's because of what my brand is. But the income and the branding, his shoe deals, his his legitimate endorsement deals. Like, he probably would have been signed by a Lamborghini, not given a Lamborghini to drive around or one of those, right? I mean, they would have been like one of these companies would have been like, I want you to endorse us. Here's the deal. His deal, I think he would have been able to handle it, as you see him do now with his attention. Would have been, how do I create it to give myself a platform to better the world with, whether it is working on human trafficking, as you saw him talking in the government hearings the other day, to creating the platform for him to help people around the world. So I think he's different than any other player that I've ever been around, or one of the most unique ones. I know certainly it would have affected me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to speak for you, but knowing you, it would have had.
Yes,
we might have used our money a little bit differently. I would have been more on the Carson side of things, driving the Lambo a little bit for fun than maybe
or the Gucci shoes. Bo Kennedy says it best. Tim would have paid for more Make-A-Wish kids than St. Jude herself. That is 100% correct there from our guy Bo Kennedy in the chat room. All right, that leads me to the last school I want to talk about, and that's Florida. You obviously intimate with the university, were there a long time as an OC and head coach, and kind of going through some unique times right now with Billy Napier. The fans, the expectations. Hell, I know that I grew up a Florida fan. I grew up there in Florida. Like, I understand you're the head coach of Florida. their expectations to win. And Urban obviously set that bar really high, just a couple of decades ago. Can he get it done this year? And what does he need to hit, or what does he need to do to please that fan base?
Well, I think there's a couple aspects to it. I think the one thing that a lot of the Florida didn't realize is how far behind they were.
Yeah.
They had no football. They didn't have any football facilities. They were a couple of years ago. It was you had to walk across campus to get to a practice field. We measured it out. It was the kids were walking 3/4 of a mile just to go back and forth to practice. There were no meeting rooms. There were no medical recovery areas. They were just so far behind in the college football landscape with facilities and what players needed in development. And I think a lot of the answer was, hey, we didn't need that back in the 90s with Coach Spurrier. We didn't need it in the early 2000s when, Urban won, the 2 out of 3 national titles. Why do we need this 15 years later? Why do we need facilities? What does that do for anybody? And so part of the struggle was, when I was there on the back end of me, I know they just moved into the facility. So now when someone visits campus in recruiting, it's much easier, come in and, hey, here's our football facility. Hey, here's the chefs cooking meals. Here's food for your nutrition. Here's recovery areas for, here's the medical things for you to maximize yourself. Here's a premier strength and conditioning facility for the football team to get you bigger, faster, stronger. So you set NIL aside, which everybody thinks it's just NIL. There's still a lot of recruiting that goes on. So as a young guy comes to campus, says, okay, one, do you have what's in place to help me maximize to become the best player I can to achieve my goals of getting to the next level and going to the NFL? Florida finally has that in place. It's new. I used to, it wasn't a secret. Kids would leave other programs, come to visit us, and like, hey, take us to your hydrotherapy. Where's your cryotherapy recovery chambers? No, we don't have those. Hey, where's your practice field? Well, we got to kind of go. Well, my mom can't get there. You got to get a car, put her in a car. So we have to drive to practice here. How does that work? Hey, where's your meeting room areas? Well, they're underneath the stadium. You didn't have it. Where's our area? Where's our training table area? Well, we just have to-go meals for you. We didn't have. There was nothing. So I think problem one is they got all that in place, and now all of a sudden that's all in place. Now they're looking at the same boosters to put the money in for that, saying, hey, we need all the NIL money now to pay for it. Like, we just gave you money to catch up. They're like, well, actually, everybody else had that already. We were far behind.
Yeah.
So I think they are in place. And I think one of the things that Florida has to do is find stability within the program. And, so you can say all you want. Let's put Billy Napier on the hot seat this year. Well, you're going back to not creating stability within the program. And that has been the issue to let it build, right? I think that the one of the hard things that always any coach of Florida deals with is their fans like points.
Yeah.
They want to score. They want to score, right? They want to see points put up on the board. So if you're winning and scoring points, they're happy. If you're winning and not scoring points, they have one negative thing to complain about, right? It's kind of winning, scoring points, they're complaining, losing score, like winning, not scoring, they're complaining about not scoring points, losing scoring, they're complaining that we lost. So it's they want kind of this complete total package. But I think if they can create stability within the program, if Billy Napier is the answer and everybody believes that long term, that he's the guy, well, then make sure in today's world, give him the time to go do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you have to create the narrative out there too, to help with that stability for recruiting, for boosters, for NIL? Because I do feel like that there is this narrative out there that Billy's on the hot seat. If he doesn't get, we've all seen the schedule. The schedule sucks. The schedule's maybe the hardest schedule in all of college football this year. If he doesn't get to a bowl game or doesn't get to 7 wins, Billy's gone. To me, like, that's the narrative. And in today's world where social media and these high school kids or college kids see all that, it's hard to build stability and be able to build for next year when kids are waiting for him to get essentially his head chopped off.
Well, it is. And I think that's a recurring cycle, because if you're looking at it saying, okay, what coach has been given the time to build that program at the University of Florida?
Yeah.
I mean, really to go put the stamp on it. Mm-hmm. Now, the argument in today's college football world is, hey, it's a different world than it used to be, right? It is. And I always think this, right? And year one, it's a little bit exciting. It's new. Year two, it's some of the players that were there that stayed to buy in, have a chance. In the older days. Year three, it's starting to become your team. But there's usually, and then I always think, sometimes the 4 or 5, there's always going to be a year where you have the players that didn't, your transition year, if you will, right? The players that didn't buy in and stick around for when you became the head coach, right? That have left, and you haven't built the multi-year recruiting foundation within your program. So whether that's year 3, 4, or 5, in that you're going to kind of have the tricky thing. Now you might have success, but there's going to be kind of that hiccup until it becomes the solid foundation, right? You look at Georgia. Kirby, early on, there were questions.
Yeah.
Right? Had good, little bad, good, and then got to the point where now there's stability. Nick Saban, even everybody early on, there's kind of these, it can be good early, then there's a little drop, and then there's the long-term stability. Now, in today's college football, everybody gets answer. One, because there's so much social media, there's so much scrutiny, and you have really the ability to take ownership of the team faster, because you can come and say, a la Colorado, you're all gone. I have a new team. And, that team is immediately mine. I still think it takes into several more years, right? And you look at who are the successful programs over the last however many years, right? I go back to my days at Mississippi State. We built a long-term successful program at Mississippi State. Well, they didn't have a quick trigger. Kentucky. Well, but, Mark Stoops, it took several years, right?
But those places are the difference of there's not like this expectation though.
To create. They gave
you get more time.
Let's go create what we are and who we are.
Yep.
And I think, but even Georgia, I think, had patience. There was a stretch, from the time you played in the SEC. I might be off on this one, but the time you played in the SEC championship. When you were the quarterback, to getting back to going to back-to-back SEC, right? There was a long term where they needed to go back, re-identify themselves, create a new identity, build a foundation that has now been built. And I think, Florida be probably best served to try to do something like that, and if it's not Billy Napier, who is it going to be that you're going to sit there and say, we're done. We're all in. This is going to be a long-term deal.
Deion Sanders. Hey, coaching sounds this whole patience thing. It sounds like me trying to grow out my hair, because like once a year I try to grow it out, and I can't get through the awkward stage, so then I chop it off. It feels like coaching. You can't get through the awkward stage where things are going great to get to the nice flowy T-bob hair on the other side of it. So you just chop it off, and then a year later you try to do it again. Can't get through the awkward stage. You chop it off. This was literally me for like 10 years with my hair, and then I just said, what? I can't do it, so I'm not going to even try to grow it out. So. All right, we've kept you long. I do got to get your thought on one more thing before I let you go. Coach Dan Mullen join us right now. 12-team playoff, 14 playoff, automatic buys for the SEC and Big Ten is now part of the discussion if they do move the 14. What are your thoughts as we move into this new era? Do you like 14? Are we rushing past 12? And what are your thoughts about the automatic buys?
Yeah, I think, the one thing that we always keep messing up in college football, let's see if something works first.
Yeah.
As soon as we got to a 14 playoff, we needed more. We need 8 or 12. Okay. We haven't gotten to 12 and we immediately want to get to 14. And the problem comes with college football. I think almost you'd be best to come in and just stop. Okay. We're going to stop. We're going to put a group together. We're going to blow it up. Okay. And let's get some, we're just going to start. We're going to take college football. Hey, Congress, we need your help on one thing. Remove college football from the NCAA and all others. We're going to break. We're going to break 72 teams off.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have 9 8-team conferences. Okay. First and second place, advance, get bids. Okay. And guess what? The teams below them go to the old traditional bowl games. We're going to keep old traditional bowl games because there's still interest in bowl games. We announce bowl games. Fans love it. People watch them. They get ratings. There's nothing more I want to do than watch a bowl game between Christmas and New Year's or leading up. That it's the greatest time of year. There's football on all the time. So we're going to take the 16 teams and put them in a playoff. We're going to take the other teams. And guess what? Division, whatever, the division that has these 9 teams in, right? The third place team from the Southeastern divisions playing the third place team from the West Coast division. Well, you can go back to creating great rivalries. You can go back to it. There's got to be find a way to say, hey, Congress, we need your help. If we're going to break these off, TV contracts are now voided.
Yep.
And we're going to go renegotiate TV contracts
as a whole.
These 72 teams that they're going to split evenly.
Yep.
And championships are going to be won on the field. So you're going to play the 8 teams within your division. The other 8, so you have 8 division games, 4 at home, 4 on the road, you're even. First, right? And the division rank, your division thing comes in first, and then your non-conference comes afterwards, and you're going to play 4 teams from these other divisions, right? And I just, we're going to blow up the calendar.
The calendar needs to be blown up. That's the number one thing. The whole calendar needs to be blown to shit.
And the problem is college football can't get out of its own way because we want to get to 14 teams before we had 12. And everything keeps evolving and saying, hey, just stop it all. Let's try to blow it up, reset it, right? And let's move college football out of the ends. Let's try to not make a rule that Alabama or Georgia football, for all the people watch your show, right? All the Georgia football has to follow the exact same rules as Ursinus College water polo.
Makes no sense. No sense.
Because it's hard to say they really should be under the exact same ruling and everything that we do. I think that is the biggest deal. Listen, the conferences shouldn't get automatic buys. Whatever's going to get it to the point where we just say, hey, we just need to stop. Listen, first thing we need to do, I would go and Notre Dame fans go ballistic. Okay? You have to be in a conference to get in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So we'll play you. You can be part of it all. You can do your thing, but you're not part of the playoff bid. You can go to maybe a bowl game or something, but you're no longer in the playoffs because you're no longer part of a conference. And, let's find ways to make it all one on the field instead of being just purely voted on. Let's find a new system that works.
Hey, it only makes too much sense to let the play determine who's a champion, not a bunch of people who don't focus on college football 24/7 to decide who plays in the playoffs and who doesn't. So only makes a little bit of sense.
Oh, yeah.
Our game's weird. It is weird. All right. Well, we've taken too much of your time. Coach Dan Mullen, man, heal up that knee so I can beat your ass in golf this summer. Have some fun. Good luck to Kalen on the basketball court. Make sure that he doesn't lose that beautiful golf swing of his. And we'll definitely get you back on the show when T-Bob isn't golfing and drinking beers himself.
Hey, that's what I got to come in and tag in. You need all these people to help when he's out enjoying the qualities of life, right?
Well, I was in Disney last week, so I left him solo for the entire week. I was in Disney with the kids.
That's an experience right there for you, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Taking the
Two kids under 4 was an absolute blast. We had a good time. I will say this. Both kids were angels. I mean, I was shocked with how rested I felt afterwards because we all went to bed at 9. All 4 of us.
That's because you're completely blown out and exhausted.
We're blown
you haven't
out.
Walked so much in your life.
I mean, I remember the last night, Wednesday night, Maddox and I are, we're in his bed watching a movie, and I look over, it's 8:30. Sharon's asleep already. So then I turn the movie off at 9. I jump into bed with her. He goes to bed. Well, I'm in bed at 9, wake up at 7. I got 10 hours of sleep. I don't know the last time I got 10 hours of sleep. I woke up feeling refreshed. I was like, this ain't that bad. So no, it was good. But Coach, appreciate you joining us once again. That is Dan Mullen. We're gonna toss to DraftKings and a little bit of announcement for our Thursday show.
The thrill and excitement of March Mania is here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps, is giving new customers a shot to turn $5 into $150 instantly in bonus bets. All you got to do, place any college basketball bet. That's right. So if you like the Cinderella stories, put your money where your mouth is. You think a 16 can beat a 1 again, or you just want to go full chalk? It's all there on DraftKings. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code TBOB, TBOB. New customers bet $5 to get $150 instantly in bonus bets only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code TBOB, TBOB. The crown is yours.
All right. Appreciate everyone joining us here today. So on Thursday, so we won't be in here tomorrow. On Thursday, another live show. Cole Kublick will be joining T-Bob and myself. We'll be doing a mailbag show. So send your questions to our email address or on Twitter, whatever you want to do. Send them in there. We'll get those answered with Cole. So part of the show will be with Cole. Then T-Bob and I will obviously answer some more personal questions if you have those in there as well. So once again, like, subscribe, close to 15K. I myself will honor the bet if we get to 15K. So I will chug a beer here on the show. Won't be like T-Bob who won't cut his hair. But appreciate y'all once again. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will see you Thursday for a mailbag show with Cole.